Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Clismcast. My name is Meoni, and today I'm going to be looking at the Sorcerer class in the game TERA Online, which I was able to access on the CBT5 this weekend. Sorcerers channel the potency of purest magic through their mystical discs, directing unseen energies to damage many foes at once, as well as guarding the flanks of their allies and breaking up charges. Playing a key role in every battle, the Sorcerer's keen mind allows him to spot and exploit any weakness shown by the enemy, or escape from a tight spot using arcane tricks. Boasting one of the highest damage outputs amongst the classes in TERA, a Sorcerer, if correctly employed, can turn the tides of any battle. As a dedicated damage dealing class, Sorcerers have a wide array of spells which can be used to control battles from behind the front lines, obliterating weaker enemies and destroying approaching targets with blasts of pure arcane power. The Sorcerer wears cloth armour and as such must rely on correct positioning, mobility and controlling the movements of his foes to avoid coming into direct contact with enemy fighters. Though they are rather squishy, they can hold their own in a duel by outsmarting and outmaneuvering their opponents, which I'll show you later on in another video where I do some PvP. So what exactly is a Sorcerer's role? Well, Sorcerers are pure artillery, basically. They deliver electricity against a target, either with pinpoint accuracy or in punishing barrages. I mean, a Sorcerer shortens any fight, clearing out minor threats quickly with area of effect attacks, or doing massive damage to large invaders with targeted skills. They can also provide covering fire, slowing down enemies or blunting an attack so that healers can carry out their jobs, and the melee fighters can maneuver around a room more easily that you're fighting in. Sorcerers probably are not as flexible as other classes in the game, but when you're in a fight it's rather nice to have brought along a gun. So with that said, let's go through the spells and what level you can expect to get them. The first spells that you get at level 1 are Fireball and Flame Pillar. Fireball is essentially a reticle targeted skill shot, which is a fireball that shoots a fireball at a target, doing more damage if the target is closer to you, that you aim and then you fire it. So that's an aimed ability. Then you get Flame Pillar, which is essentially you summon a column of flame directly in front of you that burns any enemies that are within it. So this is used in melee, usually used when you don't have aggro on something, or if you know that the monster is not going to hit you within a few seconds. You can get one of these off and then dodge away quickly. It's quite a skillful ability, but it limits your movement completely whilst using it. It's a casted ability for a few seconds whilst the damage goes off. At level 2 you hit Mana Infusion, which is essentially an MP5 skill which you can use in combat, because obviously later levels, if you haven't got a very large mana pool, you run out of mana quite quickly. So you can tap this and it will restore mana either in combat or out of combat, no problem. And then obviously at level 2 you get Backstep, which is your first of 2, I believe, abilities that allow you to escape a situation. So you take a few steps backward out of harm's way. So that's really useful to have keybound. You can't really play the game without that ability past level 2, to be honest. At level 4 you get your next ability. This is quite a cool one. This is Magma Bomb. This is an arc of fiery projectiles that you fire several meters away that go in an arc from you, where it will explode, damaging anyone nearby with splash damage. So that's a really nice ability to have. Kind of tricky to get used to at first, but then you kind of get used to it, and it comes second nature to throw one of those in during your priority list of attacks later on in the game. Now at level 6 you get your first trap, and if you're familiar with hunter traps in World of Warcraft, you're not too far wrong if you compare them. Painful Trap is your level 6 ability that sets a trap that explodes in all directions when you step on it. So you put this down and you basically back away, and if a mob or player does land in that, well, they will get a small amount of damage, and well, it will do damage if more than one target stands on it, but likelihood is that you will get one person or one NPC stand on that and it will explode, unless you were training like hundreds of mobs towards you. And then obviously at level 8 you get Time Gyre. This is your first stun. Now this is a really cool mechanic, I thought. With Time Gyre you can basically freeze any targets you lock onto and you place them where they are and prevent them from dodging or teleporting for a few seconds. This is a way of locking down a player, basically. And the way this works is you press the ability, the time gyre, whatever button you've keybounded to, and then you paint with your cursor the targets you want to be affected by this, and then you press the button again, and then they are affected by this ability. So it's a really cool way of using aimed skills here. So you're even having to aim your stuns here, which is quite cool. So if someone's being really agile, obviously you're going to have to be quite quick with your mouse, which is quite useful for PvP. And you will find a lot of these abilities that I'm reading off are very similar for the other classes in the game. A lot of them are purely skill based, and that's the way the game is really taking the combat. Yeah. At level 10 you get your next ability, Ice Needle. Now this is possibly my favourite out of all of them. This is really useful. Basically, Ice Needle launches an ice shard that briefly slows the movement speed of each target it pierces. Now this works in a direct line, right? So if I fire my Ice Needle at a load of mobs which are coming towards me, and they happen to be in a line, or if there are a few players in, say for instance, a BG, which are in a line, then it will hit the first one, and then it will hit everything consecutively afterwards that's behind it for the whole length of the spell. Now it does have a limit, obviously, of how far the spell will go, how far the spell effect will travel. However, if it goes through more than one, it won't stop until it's reached that limit. So you can slow down an absolute ton of mobs and do a lot of splash damage. It's really, really useful. At level 12 you get Retaliate. Now a lot of classes get the same ability or ability very similar to it at level 12, which is essentially once you're knocked down, it's a button you can press and you will leap to your feet and knock down the players or mobs around you to recuperate. Now at level 14 you get your first dot. Now dots in this game work very differently to how dots work in World of Warcraft, for example, on a Warlock. Now the first dot you get is called Pain Blast at level 14. Now several targets within a circle, several meters that you place in front of you that you target and press the ability, will writhe in agony and take damage for several seconds. So this skill inflicts less damage on other players than it does to actual mobs in the game. Obviously that had to be made, that change, because it's quite a devastating ability, this dot. But nevertheless it's still very useful, and it's nice to have an aimed dot that will do area of effect dot damage. So it's kind of forgiving. You can place it very near to a target and it will hit them. Very useful ability. Then at level 14 as well you get Mana Siphon. This charges up an ability which you can launch if you charge it for a small amount of time on the yellow bar, keeping the button pressed down, a small amount of mana from a target when you launch it at them. If you charge it up to the red limit by holding the button down more than previous until its limit, it will launch a projectile that, if it hits the target, will sap a greater amount of mana from the target. Which is a really cool idea, really, and is really useful in dungeons. I've used it a lot of time. It's, a fundamental part of the class. You burst a lot of damage, which costs a lot of mana, so you need a lot of mana regeneration abilities. But even this is skill-based, so you've got to knock this off and do damage, which is really quite cool, limiting the downtime based on how quickly you can react. At level 16 you get Glacial Retreat. Now this is the second ability, and I think it's the final ability you get, which allows you to move out of the way of things. Actually no, that's a lie, there is another ability that I just thought of, which I'll come to. But Glacial Retreat at level 16 freezes the ground before you, and then you leap backwards. So it damages a target which is near you, and then allows you to escape from them, which slows them down with the ice damage, and freezes them, but also does splash damage. So it's really useful. Say for instance you've got a warrior coming towards you, you can hit that ability, he will get frozen in a little bit of damage, and you can jump backwards. And then if you timed it well, there's no real cooldown limitation, so you can hit the two retreat buttons and then charge up a really nice big spell and whack it to death. That's what I usually do. It's really nice to have. At level 18 you get one of the coolest looking abilities in the game. This is Arcane Pulse. So you charge up a slow moving, it is very slow moving, but deadly energy ball that would that basically plows through multiple enemies or players, inflicting a mass amount of damage. The limitations are It's insanely powerful the more you charge it. So you've got obviously your green bar, your yellow bar, and then your red bar for how long you hold down the button. So obviously you've got downtime whilst casting, and then the ability moves very slowly. So this is more of a mob ability, not really that useful in PvP, considering if somebody really lets you get this off and they get hit by it, they pretty much don't deserve to be in the PvP, because they're either AFK or DC'd. There is no way in hell that's like an unavoidable skill. So really useful in dungeons, but not so useful in PvP at all. At level 20 you get Flaming Barrage. This is another one of your you paint your targets abilities, a bit like the stun I previously mentioned, but this does damage. This is the only ability really I've found that isn't really that skill based. You basically paint your target after pressing the button, your targets rather, and then you press it again and it will launch small fire bolts, which don't do a lot of damage, but they do enough sort of damage on multiple targets to make it viable on mobs. And I can imagine quite viable on players if they're low health and they're about to heal. This could be quite useful. So that's a really nice ability to think about. At level 22 you get Teleportation. It's called Teleport Jaunt, and this is a really cool ability. Essentially a mage's blink from WoW, which allows you to blink a short distance in the direction your camera faces. This is a lot more. This is a lot less buggy than in WoW. You can actually aim things properly, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a really nice ability, and I've used it on occasion where you get mobs come close to you, you've got your back to a wall, and you can literally blink through the mob or whatever's in front of you and get to safety and jump backwards, charge an ability and kill it. And that's what I do. At level 24 you get an ability called Mind Blast. Now this is essentially a sleep. You can target this like your dot, so a few meters in front of you, you can put down this sort of blue circle, which allows anything in it that's available to be put to sleep, that's not sleep immune, and including players to sleep. So that's a nice ability if you want to gain some distance again. A lot of these abilities are skill-based distancing moves, because again, you are quite squishy. You need these to survive. At level 26 you get Fire Blast, which is a fire blast which blasts any target in a large flaming circle, which is in a few meters in front of you. This is a bit like the Poison Dot, only this one is fire, essentially, which hurts them and does damage over time with fire. At level 28 you get Lightning Trap, which is your second trap, which does exactly what it says on the tin again. Instead of your stunning damage, it paralyzes the target with electricity if they are in that circle. It has a 10-second duration that has only got a brief paralysis effect on it, but it's still quite useful. In reflection, I don't think it's quite as useful as it should have been, but it's still a quite cool ability. Now at level 32 you get your next ability. Now unfortunately I haven't got any footage of this, but the ability is called Overchannel, and I thought it was worth talking about anyway. So this Overchannel ability, which basically is a pop ability that you press before you use another ability, which basically makes your next attack within a few seconds do a lot more damage than it usually would. So it's quite nice to have. And I think there's a lot of examples of skills like that in World of Warcraft, if you wanted to compare it to something. Like Elemental Mastery, for example, on a Shaman. And at level 36 you get Void Pulse. Now Void Pulse is a large, powerful sphere. Not quite as powerful as the charged ability, but this fires an instant fire ball, basically, at a single target, which does quite a lot of damage, but less than the charged ability. At level 40 you get your first sort of mana ability. It's called Mana Barrier, which casts a magical shield that absorbs up to a fixed amount of damage, burning mana to do so. The longer the mana barrier is up, the less mana you're going to have until it obviously runs out, so you want to turn that off when you're not taking damage. At level 44 you get Burning Breath. Basically an ember of energy locks onto and drills into targets, burning them slowly. So this skill does less damage to other players, but is quite devastating. I wish I had some ability footage of this, but obviously on the beta you could only get up to level, I think it was 38, sorry. So obviously I wasn't able to get to this point. But essentially it's awesome. It's essentially just a laser beam, which is fucking awesome. At level 48 you get an ability which I've not had the pleasure to use, which is called apparently Burst of Celerity, which increases your attack speed. So your cooldowns on your flame, let's say your fireball ability, if you popped Burst of Celerity before using it, you'd be able to tap it. You know, you'd be able to spam it repeatedly, and you would get lots and lots and lots of fireballs and stuff. You get the idea. It's a nice little ability. Has quite a huge cooldown though. I can't remember it offhand, but it's quite a nice ability to have in PvP if you just need to nail something hard, or some extra burst needed in PvE. At level 52 you get Hailstorm. Now this is a cool ability which I really wish I could show you, which summons an ice storm in front of you that damages and progressively slows everyone within it. So it's a bit like Thunderstorm in World of Warcraft, but a hell of a lot more cool, I imagine. Level 56 you get Nerve Exhaustion, which is a lock-on ability where you lock on and hex nearby players so that they can't use the basic attacks and recharge mana. That has a small duration, but is quite cool. You have Mana Volley, which is your final ability at level 58, that I have available to talk about today, which is an ability that the target players you lock onto slowly bleed mana, which you drink in. So it's a way of absorbing mana from players and sapping them, essentially, mana burning them. But obviously that is a target-based ability. So I think you'll agree there's some really nice abilities available for the Sorcerer, and I could show you like half of them. But there's still some balancing issues that I think need to be addressed. I still think they're quite powerful, if not slightly too powerful in certain situations. The charged abilities don't do nearly as much damage as, say, for instance, your basic abilities, such as your Magma Bomb, which does amazing damage. I mean, in PvP I was able to kill someone purely by avoidance and using that ability. So I think there's still some balancing issues with the class to be done, but I still think it is incredible amounts of fun. It's a lot more fun to have aimed spells. Obviously I play a lot of casters in whatever game, MMO or otherwise I play. So it's a lot of fun to have some skill in the game. And I think over the next few videos, including my PvP video, you will see a lot of more about what I mean by pure skill is needed to play this game. So thank you for watching. This has been my Sorcerer showcase. I hope you've enjoyed it and have got some little tidbits of information that might be useful if you decide to play TERA or have any interest on how the Sorcerer and the abilities of the Sorcerer work in the game TERA Online. I've been Meoni and you've been watching the Clismcast. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one and many more games that we're featuring over the next few weeks and months to come. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. I'll see you later.